Before we begin, just a couple words of introduction, what we're learning and why we're learning it. We're going to learn the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and the Chesed Mishpat section of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And the reason why it's important to learn this and why we're learning this specifically is because Dini Mamanis, everyone knows, the Gemara already says, Reiv Begazel Miyad Barayas, that the Nisayan of Mamanis, of money, is something that most people struggle with. And there are other types of the expressions in Gemara. The Bali Musar write at length about how important it is to be careful with money, especially with other people's money, and how praiseworthy it is to be careful with these things. So just from this alone, this brief introduction, it's understood that the dinim of Chesed Mishpat, of Gneva and Gzela and the Gnevas Das and etc., is not something that's shayach only for dayonim and rabbonim. It's something that every single if you need to know what to do, you need to know these halachas. So we have to learn them. At the same time, learning Chesed Mishpat goes without saying is not something that you could do al regalachas. It's something that requires time and effort, and like any area of Torah, to learn halacha is not something. It requires effort and hasmada shkida and Chesed Mishpat. It's not like we don't have enough without the 427 simanim of Chesed Mishpat, the Tur B'S Yosef and the B'Chaber Amashach and Sman Ktsas and Nesivis and everything else. So we have a problem. On the one hand, we have to know the halachas. On the other hand, it's like practically impossible for somebody who's not sitting in Kollel for 8 hours a day, and even those who are sitting in Kollel for 8 hours a day, between their Chaim and Yeridea, when are they going to get the Chesed Mishpat? However, there is a solution, and the solution is in the form of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, we know that unfortunately we're missing the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on many parts of Shulchan Aruch. We have Alter Rebbe on most of Erech Chaim, on some small parts of Yeridea. We don't have anything on Even Ezer, unfortunately, but we do have a Chesed Mishpat section. The Chesed Mishpat section is structured in the same way as the Erech Chaim section. If you look in the Erech Chaim, in the Hakdama, the Alter Rebbe's sons, and the Hakdama to Chesed Mishpat to the Shulchan Aruch, explain the structure of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And as everyone who's seen it inside probably knows, the way Chesed Mishpat, the way Erech Chaim is structured, is that there's a pnim, and the pnim is just regular plain halachas presented in an easy, accessible way. And then there's a kuntra sacher, and the kuntra sacher is the pulpulim and the complexities, and where the Alter Rebbe explains how he reached certain conclusions and why he passed in a certain way. And the reason that's in the kuntra sacher and not in the pnim is because it's not really, most of the time, it's not really negei halacha. That's for the Talmidei Chachamim and Rabbonim, people who are sitting in the Kollel, who are able to learn leman learning, but just to know what to do, it's enough to just read the pnim, just to read the halachas, where the Alter Rebbe writes his maskanas halacha l'maisa. The Yeridea, on the other hand, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch is structured differently. There's both the pnim and the kuntra sacher are both presented as commentaries to the Shulchan Aruch, and the reason for that is that Yeridea, the halachas of Yeridea, Hilchos Chita, Hilchos Nida, at least the ones we have, is not really something that the average person is opening up the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch to find out halacha l'maisa what to do. That's it was written for Rabbonim and Maskilim and those who are able to learn with the proper time and attention that kind of learning requires. When it comes to Chesed Mishpat, so common perception that Chesed Mishpat is for dayanim. You would think that Chesed Mishpat would also be the same way, but in fact, it's the opposite. Chesed Mishpat is structured like Erech Chaim. It's halachis, halacha l'maisa, presented in a clear, easy, accessible way. There is some kuntra sacher with some more complex discussions, and the Alter Rebbe, the shakla v'tarya, but the halachas, halacha l'maisa, are presented in the pnim. Moreover, the Alter Rebbe's Chesed Mishpat is unique, even more so than Erech Chaim, that it's not written according to the order of the Shulchan Aruch. It's a series of simanim with each have a title with a set of halachas. And the reason is because in all 427 simanim of Chesed Mishpat, there are a lot of halachas there that are not necessarily relevant on a day-to-day basis. Hilchos Dayanim and Hilchos Eidos and things like that. They're not something that you're going to encounter in work and in regular life, but there are many halachas that are. So the Alter Rebbe collected all of those halachas, and the lashon that it says on the Sharblat, halachas hatzriches mitur chesed mishpat, and he compiled them all into one place for everyone to be able to sit and learn in Pashut, to know what to do, what halachas from the Chesed Mishpat section of Tur and Shulchan Aruch are, relevant and important on a regular day-to-day basis. So, being that that's the case, it's incumbent upon us to, first of all, the Alter Rebbe wrote it, so we should learn it, and also Bechlal, to Pashut know what to do, Pashut know what the halachas are. We're going to begin with Hilchos Gezeilah and Geniva. And actually, the Rebbe is medayik over here. Interesting deal, which is related to what we just spoke about. Says that in the Rambam and in the Torah, and consequently in the Shulchan Aruch, Geniva comes first. First comes Hilchos Geniva, and then comes Hilchos Gezeilah. And the reason for that is because that's the order of how these dinim appear in Torah. The halachas of Geniva first appear in Parshas Mishpatim. The Isser of Geniva is in Parshas Kadeshim, later Geniva. But the halachas of Arba v'Chamisha are already in Parshas Mishpatim, and then the halachas of Gezeilah are only later in Parshas Vayikra. So that's why the Rambam first writes Geniva and then Gezeilah. So to the Shulchan Aruch, first Geniva and Gezeilah. The Alter Rebbe puts them together. But when he puts them together, it's Hilchos Gezeilah uGeneivah. Gezeilah is first, and then also if you look at the first 5 words, Aser ligzeil lignev, 4 words. He puts Gezeilah first. And the Rebbe explains that it's the reason for this is what we just discussed, that the Alter Rebbe is meant to be halacha l'maisa, halachas that are relevant on a day-to-day basis. The difference between Gezeilah and Geniva, we'll probably know that Geniva happens at night, and it could be also by day, but the point is it happens in secret and requires an investigation. It's a whole thing. Gezeilah happens in broad daylight. Everyone knows about it. And b'meila, first of all, it happens easier, and second of all, it's easier to fix. Geniva is something that's a more involved process. Like I said, it requires an investigation. It takes time to find out all the details, to find out all the facts. So that is something that is less prevalent on a day-to-day basis. So that's why Gezeilah comes first. However, as we'll see, both Gezeilah and Geniva are relevant. So without further ado, I'm going to read Sif Aleph inside. And then Be'ezus Hashem will go back and focus on a few points that are mentioned in the Sif and discuss them. And hopefully that's going to be how we're going to do this as we continue. We're going to just focus on reading and learning the Alter Rebbe inside, and in certain places where it's important to sharpen things and to bring it down a little bit more, halacha l'maisa, l'mata me'asar tvachim, and to apply it to situations, how it would apply to us in today's day and age. We're going to do that, but the ikar is to focus on Pashut learning the Shulchan Aruch. If you are following inside, you can follow inside, and Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch Chesed Mishpat Hilchos Gezeilah uGeneivah. If not, you should be able to see it here on the screen. Sif Aleph. Aser ligzeil lignev kol shehu din Torah. It's aser min haTorah to steal, or to do Gezeilah or Geniva, which we just discussed what the difference between those two things is, and it's also well known, as we all learned it in yeshiva. the nafkamina theoretically between Gzela and Gneva is that a Ganav has to pay kefil and a Gazlan does not have to pay kefil. However, nowadays, being that kefil is a knas, we don't have knases nowadays, so there isn't really so much of a nafkamina. But there are different actions that have different names and different halachic classifications. So it's usher to be gezel, to do Gzela or Gneva. Even a little bit, even a tiny amount. Minater, bein misral, bein minacher. Whether you're stealing from a yid, whether you're stealing from a guy, bein gadol, bein katan. Whether someone is stealing from a gadol, from an adult, or from a katan, from a child. Even if the guy pained the yid, some kind of pain that is not shaykh, just pain, but it doesn't owe you any money. So even if he did something wrong to you, it's usher to steal from a guy. Even though less than a shava pruta is not called money, and you don't have to return it, a chatzi shir is aser minater. To explain what this means in simple words, the first sentence was aser lignev kolshehu. You're not allowed to steal even the tiniest amount, even a penny. So now comes afal pi shapachas mishava pruta. If it's kol shehu, it's less than a shava pruta, is not even called halachically mamin. It's not called mamin. Vein tzarich lashive, and you don't have to return it. There's a mitzvah minatera, as we'll see later in the siman, that there's a mitzvah. A mitzvah minatera to return veheshiv es gzela, just like the mitzvah of Shavas Aveda. There's also a mitzvah of Shavas Gzela. Somebody stole something, they have a mitzvah to return it. However, if somebody steals less than a Shava Pruta minadin, mikra adin, they're not obligated to return it. Why? Because less than a Shava Pruta is not halachically significant at all. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, you're not allowed to have a chatzi shir of iser by any iser. So just all isurim in Torah have a certain shir. Usually it's a kezayis. It's usher to eat a kezayis of basar b'chalav. It's usher to eat a kezayis of chazer. However, all that means is that you're only chayiv, a person is only chayiv malchus or karis or whatever it is, if they eat that shir. But if they eat less than that shir, doesn't mean that it's mutter to eat less than shir. It's usher, and it's usher minat Torah to eat even pachas mikashir. It helps us, for example, on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, somebody who's sick, who we allow them to eat, they eat. It's called shiurim, and the point is that even though it's usher minat Torah, why doesn't everybody eat shiurim? Because it's also minat Torah. It's an issa deraisa to eat shir. It's an issa deraisa to eat even less than a shir. However, somebody who's sick, so we allow them to eat. What we say, don't bring yourself to an isser chatas, to an isser karis, and eat more than a shir. Obviously, in the case of pikuach nefesh, whatever. We're not learning Hilchos Kippur now, but these are the principles on which, based on which we make those decisions. Furthermore, chatzi shir. It's important to point out that chatzi shir doesn't mean exactly half. That it's a person's only chayiv malchus if they eat a kezayis, but it's also to eat even half a kezayis, but less than half is mutter. No, the Alter Rebbe says here clearly, asher ligzel elignev kol shehu, even a tiny amount, even a mashu. The Alter Rebbe says it even more clearly in Hilchos Kippur, in Siman Taf Reishit Beis at the end. I'm going to read out the Alter Rebbe's lashon. Kol shiurin halal lashon is bar b'siman zeh. All the shiurim that are explained in this siman, ben shir achila, ben shir shtir, the whole siman over there that explains what are the shiurim that is usher to eat or drink on Yom Kippur, are only stated insofar as if you eat this much, there is a chiyuv chatas. And there's also nafkamina as it pertains to a chayla sheyesh beisakana, as was explained in a later siman, Taf Reshit Ches. Avalinian iser afilu achal kol shehu. Somebody who eats even a kol shehu or drinks even a kol shehu, hari asa iser min atera, violated an iser deraisa v'china did makol isurin shabatera shenamar behem shiurim, and the same thing by all isurin shabatera that have a shir. Shafilu b'mashu yesh behem iser matera even a mashu. I'm mentioning this because there are some opinions in achreinim that it's dafka chatzi shir and not less than a chatzi shir. The Alter Rebbe's shita is pretty clear. Okay, let's continue. Something that is so minimal that there's nobody who would be makpid on it. Like to take a stick, a little twig from a bundle, or from a fence. In order to clean your teeth, before we had commercially manufactured toothpicks, you had to find your own toothpick in the wild. So to take somebody's toothpick from their fence or from their bundle of sticks, it's mutter because nobody's makbid on it. However, it's a midas chasidus to avoid even doing that. That's based on the Yerushalmi, and the Yerushalmi says if everyone does that, then the guy is going to be left with on each little stick. The person is not makbid, but if everybody starts doing it, then he's going to be left with no more chavila and no more bundle and no more fence. So it's a midas chasidus not to do that. Okay, so go back and focus on a few things that we passed over briefly, and I don't know if we'll have time to cover everything we wanted to cover, but we'll do what we can, and we'll continue next week. Back in the beginning of the Sif, it says Asr ligzel elignev kol shehudin Torah bein mi Yisrael bein mi nachri. It's also to steal from a yid and from a guy. I'm going to talk about stealing from a guy. Stealing from a guy, the truth is, it's a machlekes rishonim. Rashi in Masachas Sanhedrin Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis says that stealing from a guy is only an Issa D'Rabbanan because of Chil Hashem. It's a Chil Hashem. Who paskins like Rashi? The Marshal. The Marshal in Yam Shel Shloima in Masachas Bava Kama. Paskins like Rashi that stealing from a guy is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. Marshal actually doesn't like Rashi's reasoning so much that it's because of Chil Hashem. It says not because of Chil Hashem, it's just because it's an appropriate thing to do. It's pasnish for a yid to steal from a yid or from a guy, it doesn't matter. That's his lashon. However, so that's the shit of Rashi and the Marshal. However, most Rishonim and Achronim, the Gemara over there in Bava Kama that the Marshal is talking about seems to say, if you read the Gemara, for a simple person like me, you read the Gemara, and the Gemara seems to say pretty clearly that stealing from a guy is an Isser Derais. And Rav Rishonim and Achronim paskin like the Pashtus, a Gemara that's stealing from a guy is an Isser Deiraisa. Rashi and the Marshal are going to have to learn that the Gemara over there, all the psukim that the Gemara brings over there is only an asmachta. There's certain things that are in Isser Derabanan, and the Gemara brings a pasuk to support that Isser Derabanan. It doesn't mean that that pasuk, that Isser is an Isser Deiraisa. For example, Bishalakum, the Gemara says, how do we know Bishalakum is Asr? The Gemara says, Oichel Bakasav Tashbireni, a pasuk in last week's parsha. It doesn't mean that Bishalakum is an Isser Derabanan. The Gemara later says it clearly. So that's how the same thing over there. The Gemara in Bava Kama brings psukim to say, how do we know that stealing from a guy is aser, and brings certain psukim to support it. So Rashi and the Marshal would have to say that those psukim are only an asmachta. However, like I said, most Rishonim and Achronim paskin that stealing from a guy is an Isser D'Oraisa. This is the mashmas of the Rambam, Hilchos Gezeilah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Tur, and Shulchan Aruch in Chesed Mishpat Siman Shin Mem Ches. And as we have seen, the Alter Rebbe over here very clearly paskins also lignev kol shehu din Torah. Bein Yisrael bein Minachri is din Torah. Okay, and like I mentioned, many other Achronim passing this way as well. But for us, it's important to know that this is the shit of the Alter Rebbe, as well as the shit of the Shulchan Aruch. Nevertheless, a yid and a guy are not necessarily identical in every single detail when it comes to dinim amanis. As we will learn, the Pesach can speak about this at length, and we'll see a little bit as we continue on and later halachas in the Alter Rebbe. But there are different things, using a guy's pikadin, there are all sorts of different details that maybe a guy's a little bit different. We're not going to get into it right now. Like I said, some of it we'll see as we continue on the Alter Rebbe, but the Nakuda is that you have to remember that it's usher to steal from a guy, it's an Issa Deiraisa. In Igris Meisha, in Chesed Mishpat, Chelik Beis, Siman Lam Tes, he writes about filling if a yeshiva that gets the grants from the government based on how many talmidim they have, as the shaila was, you're allowed to lie to the government and tell them that you have more students in order to receive more money. And he writes very, very sharply against it, that it's usher for many reasons. But one of the reasons is it's Pasha Gazela. It's a Gazela, and you're stealing from the government, and doesn't matter. Goyim, steal from a guy is an issue there. And we can also understand that any type of scheme or scam or trick or whatever to make money on a guy's cheshbon, it doesn't matter if it's Amazon or if it's an airline or something else. If it involves gzela or gneva, continue learning, we'll understand better what the gdarim of gzela and gneva are. It's in Isser Deirais. It's important for there to be, I think, greater awareness about this, because some people pasha don't realize that stealing from a guy is exactly the same thing as stealing from a yid. Moreover, there's a famous Be'er HaGola. The Be'er HaGola is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. He usually writes like mamash 2 or 3 words. And every din in the Shulchan Aruch is a little letter, and it goes to the Be'er HaGola, and the Be'er HaGola usually just writes the makar of the din. That's the original makar, whether it's a Gemara, it's a Mishnah, it's a Rambam somewhere. In Siman Shin and Ches and Chesed Mishpat, the Be'er HaGola goes on an uncharacteristically long arichos to say as follows. The halacha is over there. The Rama is writing about tricking a guy. We'll learn about this. But basically, if a guy makes a mistake, you don't have to correct him. You're not allowed to steal from a guy. But if a guy makes a mistake, he's giving you change, and he counts wrong, you don't have to correct him. Again, we'll learn more pratidinim about this as we go on. But the Be'er HaGola writes, he points out as follows: there's halacha in Shulchan Aruch in Chesed Mishpat Simarish Samakvav about Hashavas Aveda. That halacha is Hashavas Aveda. You only have to return the Aveda of a yid. You don't have to return the Aveda of a guy. Nevertheless, the Shulchan Aruch says, if somebody returned an Aveda to a guy in order to make a Kiddush Hashem, and in order for to bring glory to Yidden, so that people should know that Yidden are trustworthy people, it's a praiseworthy thing to do. It says the Be'er HaGola, it's the same thing by returning a guy's mistake. A guy makes a mistake, I can make her a din, I have a heter. You don't have to return it. But if you do it to make a Kiddush Hashem, to show that Yidden are the right people to do business with, it's a praiseworthy thing to do. And he writes as follows: I'm writing this down for generations. I've seen a lot of people that became very wealthy from a mistake that a guy made. But they did not remain successful. And they lost everything. And they didn't leave anything behind. Then he says, Rabbi Masher Kiddush Hashem, but there are many who made a Kiddush Hashem and they returned the mistake that a guy made, B'davar Chashiv. They became very successful and very wealthy, and they left a lot of things behind. The Adkan is the Be'er HaGola. Goes without saying that this is all something that's more of a Lefnim Mishar Sadin. I mean, it's Chassidus, but it's good to think about this, to realize how far this goes. Hashem lo yachzor kol tov. As I mentioned, there are a lot of prati dinim and different ifanim of stealing from a guy and doing business with a guy, which we will see as we progress in our studies of the Alter Rebbe. Okay, I think we could finish the last point. The last point was that the Alter Rebbe mentioned at the end, something that is so minimal that nobody is going to be makbid on it, like to take a stick from a fence, that's mutter. That's not considered stealing. We have to define a little bit what does it mean she'ein mi sheyakbid alav, and what does it mean a davar mu'at. So number one, ein mi sheyakbid alav means that it's not the derech to be makbid on it. Something that's so minimal that nobody is makbid on it. Where do we find a similar thing? By chatzitza. A chatzitza is something that has to, it's only if the person who has the chatzitza, whether it's by the way by tvilas nashim or tvilas kelim, it's the same thing. It has to be chatzitza, but it has to be a chatzitza. It's only a chatzitza if the owner or if the person is makbid on it. But if they're not makbid on it, it's not a chatzitza. The halacha is that it's not enough to say I'm not makbid, so it's not a chatzitza for me. It's something that it's derech reiv b'nei adam to be makbid. It's a chatzitza. We do say it l'chumra. Okay, we're not learning chatzitza now, but it's the same thing over here. Something that's derech reiv b'nei adam to be makbid. it's called makbid. It's not enough to say, oh, I know that this is the where this is my friend, and he's not going to be makbid. He doesn't mind. The Alter Rebbe writes this clearly in Hilchos Mitzio Pikadin, halacha dalet, and the halacha is as follows: Hanichnas lepardes ilaginas chaveri. Somebody who enters his friend's orchard or garden. It's also for them to pick fruits without the owner's permission. Even though the owner of the orchard or of the garden is his good friend. And he'll definitely rejoice and be very happy when he finds out that his friend had hana from his pears. Being that the owner currently does not know that you're taking his stuff, you're taking it be'isr. And the Alter Rebbe, this is Alter Rebbe's word. And we have to warn the public about this. People are nichshol in this because due to a lack of awareness. There's a Kuntres Achron over there where the Alter Rebbe is actually arguing over here with the Shach who is Mekel. The Alter Rebbe is Machmer. He says you cannot take something that obviously it's talking about not a davar muat she'ein derech lahakbid alav, something that's derech lahakbid alav. Even if you know personally that he's not going to mind, that the owner is not going to mind if you take it, it's usher to take it. The Alter Rebbe is Machmer. The Alter Rebbe continues here in the next halacha, the ragil bekach v'darke bekach, if it's something that's normal and something that you go to your parents' house, you don't have to ask them for permission to take every single thing because it's a ragil bekach v'darke bekach. They know there's an implicit permission over there to take their stuff, and moreover, the halacha over there that a person's bnei bayis are allowed to even give tzedakah to poor people. You don't have to go run ask the balabais. A poor person knocks on the door because there's an implicit permission over there. Anyway, it's a kailafia Indian, but the point that's relevant to our sif over here in Hilchos Gezeilah is that something that is a derech rev b'nei adam lahakbid alav, it's usher to steal it even if you know personally that it's not going to be makbid on you. It also goes the other way. Something that most people would not be makbid on, but this person is very makbid. Some people are very particular. It's also usher, even though it's not derech rev b'nei adam to be makbid. But if this person, if you know that they're makbid, it's also to take from them. The Aruch HaShulchan speaks this out clearly in Siman Shin and Tesif Aleph. When he knows, when the person knows that the owner is a person who's very particular, is very makbid. It's also mekardin. It's not a midas chassidus. It's also. Now, what is? Okay, hopefully the meeting won't end. According to my calculations, we should have another 5 minutes. What is? And then we'll finish up. What is something that is a davar muat she'ein haderech lahakbid alav? So we see the examples that it says in Shulchan Aruch. It's examples that already are in Gemara. That a stick from a fence. It's not really so relevant nowadays. The Aruch HaShulchan also over there in Siman Shin Tesif Aleph writes, when somebody goes to their friend's house and their friend is inhaling bitter leaves, in other words, snuff tobacco. Or they're smoking, that the guest takes a cigarette, tobacco without the owner's permission, because that's something that's ein derech lahakbid alav. I would venture to say that that's not really the case nowadays, but it depends on the time and place. When in the Aruch HaShulchan's the time and place, that was something that's considered not to be makbid. So too, when somebody when you go to someone's house and they're drinking, this is mayim chamim. I don't know if it really means hot water or tea, but you're allowed to take tea from someone's kettle or hot water from someone's kettle without really asking for permission. This is something that's included in. It's davar muat that it's not derech rev b'nei adam lahakbid alav. It's mutter. It's a midas chassidus to ask for permission first. So. Again, and we can apply this nowadays. It's really there's no concrete list of what's included in this category, but you can think about it to use someone's pen without permission, to take a plastic fork, to use somebody's toothpaste, things like that. That it's a davar muat that most people will not be makbid. It's mutter maker than to take it. It is a midas chassidus not to, and something that that the owner of makbid, you can't take it, even if it's something that most people wouldn't be makbid on, and also the other way, if something that most people would be makbid on, but that they're not makbid, that is also asr. Another, I think, common scenario is when you go to a simcha and you go to a chasana, sometimes there's food left over or desserts or snacks. So it depends on what it is. To take home your leftover food, let's l'cher is something that the owners are not makbid on. To take flowers, that's probably something that the owners are makbid on. Would seem to me. The flour, it depends on what it is. Again, remember, it doesn't make a difference that if the owners are very wealthy, so they're not going to be makbid. Something that's derech reiv b'nei adam to be makbid, that's then it's awesome. But sometimes you have a situation where it's not going, it's going to end up in the garbage anyway. So it's going to end up in the garbage anyway. It's even more than not makbid. It's their miyayish from it. It's a different situation. Again, everything is lafia inyan and hachacham ein bereshi. So that is that. And then I just want to conclude with one point that's brought down in Sfarim. We know that machalis asuris, foods that are forbidden to eat, are spiritually harmful. They're cause a timtum alev. It's not only some kind of ruchniistic inyan. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch and here in Siman Pei Aleph, among other places. I think the place can also mention in Kuf Zayin, but in any case, in Siman Pei Aleph, the Rama says it clearly that a woman who is nursing, that a baby should not nurse from a non-Jewish woman, even though her milk is kosher, but she eats not kosher food, and it is metamtem halev and moila tevara. It creates a bad nature and bad midas to the baby, and also even a firm woman, a Jewish woman who has to eat treifa foods for medical reasons or by mistake, which also happens, Shiloh, that comes up. She should not nurse the baby for for a while she's eating those things. Why? It's not that it's treif, but that it's a sakana for the baby. It causes a timtum alev. It says in Sfarim that it's the same thing with eating food that was purchased with money that was not acquired in kosher ways, and it says that when children eat money children eat food that was purchased with money that was acquired by doing business, which not in accordance with halacha. Let's put it that way. It gives them taivas, midas gruis, and it is spiritually harmful for them as they get older. So, just to end off with a point of Hiseris for something that these things it's important to be careful about, not only for ourselves, but also for our children, and also for ourselves. It's also spiritually harmful for anyone, not just to children. Okay, and with that, we'll conclude for today. Bezras Hashem will continue next week with Sif Beis and onward. Shakayach to everyone who joined.